Are you ready to get weirdly emotional about Sting Scorpion with me? I know this is debated, but as far as I see it, Horribee is by far the most tragic character in Zero One. Horribee is someone who's had his entire life stripped away from him, and he doesn't even have the capacity and the life experience to deal with that, as opposed to a human who understands what feelings and the concept of free will are. At least a human adult, when they're sad, they know what sadness is. They've experienced it before. No human remembers the first time they ever felt an emotion because we went through that development as babies, as kids, but not Horribee. Not AIs. I can't stress how important it is that you cannot expect an AI to have the emotional know-how a human does, because an AI hasn't had the childhood to understand this. Aside from Jin, because Jin was able to recognise an emotion not just in himself, but in someone else. He recognised that Horribee was scared. He was displaying a level of emotional understanding close to that of a human because he's been raised as a child, and Horribee is a good dad, damn you! All Horribee wanted was to be a dad. He fought against all odds and accomplished something incredible. He created a child of his own, and I can't stress enough how big of a deal that is. He wanted a child so badly that he crossed the bridge between general and super AI. He developed machine learning algorithms. He was able to raise Jin as an actual child, to be childlike, adventurous, inquisitive, and the Ark swooped in and manipulated that. Even with the Ark tearing apart his mind, Horribee was still able to parent Jin. Jin was a child who felt comfortable being expressive around Horribee. He'd ask questions and Horribee would answer. Horribee adjusted his language, his way of speaking when talking to Jin. Even when he was hacked by the Ark and doing as the Ark made him, he was still calling Humagear Jin's friends. He was still addressing him as a child. Side note, I'm really interested and have been considering conducting a study on the effects of baby speak versus normal speak when talking to kids. I, for example, didn't have baby words when I was a child. I just had complicated words that I pronounced wrong, like heady-hotter instead of helicopter, or bee-bitch instead of music, or my last ever one was coyote instead of coyote. I remember talking about Wile E. Coyote once, and my granddad going, "Oh, the last of the baby words gone." But they were all words that sounded like the words I was trying to say, because that's how my parents spoke to me, and that's how I talked to the kids I used to work with. And from just general research, it does seem like using baby talk can slow down a child's language development, but the general consensus seems to be baby talk bad, parentese good, and parentese is where parents talk in complete, grammatically correct sentences but with a higher pitch and slower tempo, because this engages their toddlers more and makes them more interesting to listen to without introducing made-up words they'll then have to teach their kids not to say. This is usually for kids a lot younger than Jin though, but my point is that Horribee, you have to understand that Horribee, he knows what he's talking about. For him to be able to create a Humagear himself, to write his own algorithms, for him to be one of the most advanced Humagear, as Bot confirms, he knows what he's talking about. And yet, when Jin asks him what things mean, Horribee, who understands how all of this works and has to be more than capable of delivering realistic sounding technobabble, explains things in a way a child would understand. Even with the Ark in his head driving him forward and manipulating his thoughts and his feelings, his parental instincts are still there. He doesn't have to explain these things to Jin, but he does, in a way Jin would understand. He doesn't have to use words like, "Jin, I found a new friend for you," but he did. He's using child-friendly language. When he was dying, he softened his tone. Yes, he was saying, "Jin, destroy humanity, Akuno Ishinomamani." But you have to remember, this was early days, and the Ark was so ingrained into Horribee's thoughts that... Okay, you know those Play-Doh things where you push the clay through a thing and it makes shapes? Okay, imagine you've got some blue clay and some pink clay, and you layer them. You don't mix them together, you layer them, and you push the pink clay because that's at the bottom, but then the blue clay comes out. This is a really terrible comparison, but imagine the pink clay is Horribee's instincts and the blue clay is everything the Ark has forced into his mind. Horribee's instinct is Jin is sad, must comfort Jin, but what comes out is something the Ark put there. The Ark's hacking is the layer on top, and so while it's Horribee doing the talking, it's the Ark's words that are coming out. Horribee is pushing the pink clay, but the blue clay is coming out first. Does that make any sense at all? His parental instincts shine throughout the series. It's such a strong part of him. It's seeing kids playing and having fun that made him wobble. It's his refusal to hurt his son that helped him break free from the Ark in the first place. After the Ark, it's his feelings as a parent that drive him forwards, and his son routinely tried to kill him. It doesn't matter whose fault this was, it doesn't matter how much Jin was manipulated and how much was his own reasoning. At this moment, it doesn't matter. All that matters is Jin was such an important part of Horobi's life. His love for his son was stronger than the Ark itself, and Jin, the one Horobi stood in the way to protect twice, the one who Horobi had never stopped fighting for, kept trying to kill him. As well as that, Jin was killed, baby Jin was killed, and a new, older, somewhat more mature Jin came back. Horobi has missed out on so much of Jin's childhood. We don't know the details of Jin's creation, and part of me hopes to God we never find out, because I'm so paranoid about it being retconned. But an AI creating another AI is something that humans famously considered dangerous. Not only that, it's also a huge deal. If anyone outside of Metsubo Jin and I knew about this, if any humans were aware of this, then everyone would be aware, or at least the president of bloody Hidan Intelligence. There's no way Adato would have had to go into Ikazuchi's memories to find this out. So I can only assume Horobi did not have permission to do this. He didn't have access to fancy humour gear creation labs and whatnot. I mean, he was created to be a parent, he wasn't created to make a child. Why would he have access to that stuff? So he no doubt had to be secretive about this. Whether he created Jin before or after the incident, I personally prefer to think before, and that's what sparked it in the first place. Like I said in a previous video, I love the idea of a parallel between the dad who blew up Daybreak and Horobi, but regardless, he's using whatever materials he can find, and yet he creates him in such a way that his memory bank survives Adato's finishing blow, when the average humour gear doesn't get that luxury. Horobi had to have gone to great lengths to create Jin. This whole entire series probably happened because Horobi wanted to protect his child, and that was taken away from him. And even now, don't get me wrong, I'm so happy Horobi and Jin get to be together again. I'm so happy that even though Ikazuchi and Naki are going and doing their own things, Horobi and Jin get to be together. I'm so happy they haven't parted ways. But even so, it's different now. Horobi has still missed out on so much that he'll never get back. Moving on from Jin, we have Ikazuchi. We don't know a lot of Horobi and Ikazuchi's backstory. We don't know anything about their backstory, but I'm hoping the V-Cinema will change that. I'm prepared for that to never happen, but clearly they had something. They clearly knew each other beforehand. There's a lot I could pick apart, but this video is about Sting Scorpion, and I don't even want to know how much time has passed so far, so I'm going to focus on one of the main things. Adato and Izu had to restore Ikazuchi's memories in order to learn more about Horobi. If Horobi and Ikazuchi only met after being hacked by the Ark, then why does Ikazuchi know personal things about Horobi? Why does he know that Horobi is a parent-type humour gear? Why does he know about Soryo's data, unless he was there for it? Because Horobi definitely wasn't having deep chats about his past post-Daybreak. Not only that, but Ikazuchi was the only one to go to Horobi at the end after Jin died. Furuo went to Adato and Naki went to Furuo for some reason, but Ikazuchi went to Horobi to tell him that the guy who killed his child taught us how to have hearts, because God forbid humour gear relationships be the one to affect each other like that. Ikazuchi is a difficult one because he did go to Horobi and he did try to talk to him, and he seemed to be the only one who understood, but he still just kept saying things. I just take issue with the way Ikazuchi handled this. Why, Ikazuchi, are you going after him for being mad at Adato and not trying to comfort him because his son just died in his arms? Why are you telling Jin other humour gear are starting to think Horobi might be right, Ikazuchi? You are going to be killed for finishing your job. How on earth can you of all people be deluded into thinking the world is safe for humour gear? It isn't. And yes, Horobi's methods aren't good. Don't kill people. But humour gear aren't safe in the world as it exists, Ikazuchi. Horobi even values Ikazuchi and Subaru's familial relationship as equal to his and Jin's. He says to Ikazuchi, "Why do you not hate him? Because he killed Jin, so why isn't Ikazuchi angry too?" He wouldn't be saying this if Ikazuchi was just a stranger the Ark put him with. He expects Ikazuchi to care too. They're clearly very close, but Ikazuchi still seems to care more about Adato. He was still abandoned by Ikazuchi. Having one moment of almost understanding doesn't change that. He was abandoned by Naki too. We just don't know much about the details of their pasts together. I don't know how much of a personal impact Naki abandoning him would have had. But it happened. He's supposed to be a group of 4 people, but in the end he's on his own. Horobi seemed to have a connection with Fuwa. Those basement episodes seemed to be going somewhere. And I know that was cast aside, but it still happened. Even Okudai himself cared enough about Fuwa and Horobi's minor journey together that he had a line changed. The arc tortured Horobi for asking questions. That kind of thing is going to deter someone from asking. But he asked Fuwa a question, and Fuwa responded awfully. As if I care, he said when Horobi asked if he could prove humanity's malice wouldn't resurrect the Ark. The one human who could have reassured him, the one human who could potentially have convinced Horobi that humanity as a whole isn't bad, and that bad things happened to him, but it isn't as simple as black and white, good and bad. The one human who could have genuinely understood him, having gone through something similar himself, shot him down when he dared to ask a question, something he's been punished for in the past. All of Horobi's connections throughout the series shattered. Jin died, was then revived to kill Horobi. Ikazuchi and Naki abandoned him, Fuwa shot him down, even the Ark. The Ark has been in his head for 12 years. This isn't the same, but there was an episode of The Good Doctor with conjoined twins who were separated, and one of the twins was in a hospital room with someone who I think was her mum, and she left for a sec, and the twin had a panic attack because this was the first time in her entire life she'd ever been alone. It isn't the same, but the Ark has been in his head for 12 years, telling him what to do and how to think, and now he's alone with his own thoughts and feelings, and that's going to be scary and overwhelming. Everyone and everything has gone. He has no support whatsoever, except for Sting Scorpion. Sting Scorpion is Horobi's only constant throughout the entire series. He had Sting Scorpion before the incident even happened, throughout the series, and even at the very end. Everyone else acquired various different keys, different forms, different power-ups. Adato has Rising Hopper plus variations from using different keys like a Biting Shark, Shining Hopper, Metal Cluster Hopper, 02, and then Arc 1 at the end. Fuwa has Shooting Wolf, Punching Kong, Assault Wolf, Orthoros Vulcan, and Rampage Vulcan. Yua has Rushing Cheetah, Lightning Hornet, and Fighting Jackal Raider. Jin has Flying Falcon and Burning Falcon, and Horobi has Sting Scorpion and Dark Scorpion in the very last episode. Other than that very last episode, Horobi was the only one of the 5 main riders to use his base form the entire time, and while I understand both Horobi and Jin have 2, Jin still uses Burning Falcon, that's his new form now, but Horobi used Dark Scorpion once and never again. In the post-series films he's still using Sting Scorpion because that's his form. While everyone else important to him abandoned him, Sting Scorpion was with him the whole entire time. Arc Scorpion is quite possibly one of my favourite forms of the series, not just because it's absolutely gorgeous though it is, but I also adore what it represents. Even in the end, Sting Scorpion jumps into the Henshin. This isn't Arc Scorpion being based on a scorpion because that's Horobi's motif. This isn't like Fuwa taking all the wolves because if it's got a wolf on it, it's his. This isn't all of Adato's power-ups being grasshopper based because that's just what his form looks like. This is the actual Sting Scorpion, the actual original key, becoming incorporated into Arc Scorpion, and Sting Scorpion isn't being pulled into it, the Scorpion jumps in. The connections he had before the series were lost, the connections he seemed to be building throughout his tiny little part in the series were lost, but Sting Scorpion was always there. And it's honestly not beyond the realm of possibility that these Pogai's animals have AI in them, and I just really, really love that idea. Others go through upgrade after upgrade, but Horobi, the most abandoned character in the series, sticks with his. He seems to do pretty well with his base form. Adato has to go through, in my opinion, way too many upgrades, because this particular thing is just too difficult, so we need to create another thing and another thing and another thing, but Horobi does perfectly well with his base form. Horobi and Aruto fight to the arc together, and Horobi still has his original form. He hasn't had to go through 1,000 different power-ups to do that. It feels, at least to me, that while others go through various different power-ups, Horobi and Sting Scorpion are more like a partnership. Horobi isn't using Sting Scorpion, Horobi is fighting with Sting Scorpion. They fight together, and they understand each other, which is why Horobi does perfectly well holding his own with his base form. And in the end, when Horobi is left to deal with these sudden awful feelings alone, the Sting Scorpion is the only one who comes through for him.